Welcome back everyone! Today I will show you how I made my long-time dream project, this Indian fusion dress. The fabric I used for it is this gold foil print semi-sheer cotton I got off Etsy, and I had for a while now, so when lockdown started this was the very first project I started working on. Luckily I also had some plain beige cotton in my stash to line the bodice part with. As for the construction of the bodice, I saw this technique on Instagram and I decided to give it a try. Basically you use a thin tape to mark out where you want your seams to be, and then you stretch your fabric over it and transfer the markings, cutting the fabric to size. Once you're done with all that, you can go on to transferring your pieces onto paper. Before I cut into my treasured fabric though, I also made a mock-up with both short and long sleeves to help me decide what sleeve length I liked more. I went with the one that stops just about the elbow. Then I cut the pieces out from both fabrics. I pinned and sewed both the lining and the main pieces together. Because I intend this piece to be a spring-summer dress, I didn't line the sleeves. So I only cut those pieces from the foil print cotton. I cut and sewed the sleeves onto the bodice. Then I hemmed the sleeves by hand, folding them back twice and felling the edges down carefully so that stitches wouldn't show on the right side of the fabric. I cut strips on the bias from the leftover piece of the fabric to make piping and cords. To make one continuous strip of bias, I cut the ends to a right angle and right sides facing together, I laid them on top of each other and sewed in a 45-degree angle. To make the piping, I stuck a rope to one edge of the strip and sew along it with a zipper foot to get as close to it as possible. Then I marked 1 centimeter away from the edge of the neckline, so I have some help when pinning down the piping. I pinned the piping on with the shorter side facing the right side of the fabric. I sewed it on again using the zipper foot. Right sides together, I pinned the lining to the bodice along the neckline. sewed the pieces together, then notching the seam allowance, I turned the bodice inside out. To make the cording or tori, I used the previously made strips, folded them in half and sewed half a centimeter away from the folded edge. The trick is to leave a hefty seam allowance, which makes it hard to turn it inside out, but also creates this amazing hard rope-like thing from the fabric. To turn it inside out, I used a strong thread and a needle. Make sure to tie the thread securely to the end, because if it slips out when you're halfway through turning it inside out, you're pretty much screwed. To make the latkans, I cut a circle that I folded in half, sewed, turned it inside out and attached to the ends of the cords in the back. Latkans are these decorational fabric tassels, I guess, that you can see on a lot of traditional Indian clothing. To make the skirt portion, I had to gather my leftover fabric into a skirt. My ruffler foot gave up on me, so I just went the manual way and pinched the fabric as I pushed it under the foot of the sewing machine, going slowly so I don't sew my fingers to it. Once the skirt was gathered to the desired length, I attached it to the bodice and sewed it on. Then I sewed on the zipper and tried the dress on, and realized I needed to line the skirt portion too. I hoped the fullness of it would help with the transparency, but alas it didn't. Now I was in a bit of a pickle, as this was during the height of the lockdown and I didn't have any of the lining fabric left. Until I remembered, I originally used this beige cotton to line a very itchy skirt, meaning I can just cannibalize that skirt to get a ready-made circle skirt that will match my bodice lining perfectly. Now I just had to iron the skirt, cut it to length and rehem the bottom of it. While I was at it, I also folded up the dress skirt hem twice and ironed it down. I top stitched down both. The trickiest and the most frustrating part was sewing the bodice lining to the skirt lining, which I did on the dummy and by hand to achieve the best result possible, but it still ended up looking a little wonky, which really bothers me. But at least with that, we're finally done. I absolutely adore this dress. Both the fabric and the style are right up my alley, and I'm sure to get a lot of use out of it. I might redo the lining though one day once the lockdown ends.